Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. We're going to continue with the Celts, and if you look on the screen, I attempted to draw a Crannog. I'm not great at drawing things like that. I'm more about drawing from feelings actually, so some of my pictures are like kind of off the scale weird, but I did attempt to show you, if you look how it's basically all thatched together in between the beams and how the beams are set up so it goes to a point and then it comes out like a teepee, I guess, like a teepee, but it's very circular, and then it's also dug in around, remember, so that it doesn't flood. So visualize several small crannogs stretching across an area. The next level of community is not known as a it's now known as a tuatha, or in Scottish terminology, a clan. Now, remember when I said the tuatha de Anon? Well, this is spelt differently than tuatha. It's spelt tuathe, but I think it's the same. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what the community is now known as, a tuathe. All the regionalised crannogs are sort of a similar family name. They're generally headed by what's known as a clan chief. Again, it's not by birth or hierarchy or anything like that. It was with the Saxons, but not with the Celts. The chieftain was elected to office by a vote of the community, which I think is brilliant. From here, when you get into a series of the tuathas, the next level is the province or provincial state. In Julius Caesar's campaign letters can be seen how the names, the variations are provincial, the changes, the nations of the Gaul territory, you can see how it changed. I think it's Atrebates, Icene, the Averne, the Balga, and the Dumonai. They're a few of the Celtic tribal nations that you would find as a community. If you're going back to the Crannog, it was alluded in the very beginning, it was almost a complete mini community at family level. Sounds kind of cute when you put it like that, because I've got miniatures. Sorry, I'm dwindling off, but I've got little miniatures that make a fairy world, and I've just got visions of these little Crannogs with little people. I'm sorry, yeah, that's my imagination. Livestock was, for the most part, the currency of exchange. Family wealth was determined by the number of cows, sheep, and pigs they had. Now, that's wonderful. I wish it was like that now. It's not, but I wish it was. That would be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? You know, money wasn't an issue. This thing that they print off, you know. When you start to address the Celtic Brehon law, you can see that if a person is found guilty of an offence, payment was always measured out in terms of animal stock. Farming had been found principally on the main continent of Europe with the Celts, and in the, please forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, the Vercingetorix rebellion of 46 BC, and crops are mentioned numerous times being destroyed to prevent it from falling into Roman hands. They would rather destroy their crops than let the Romans get them. However, it's not until the 3rd century it takes hold in Britain and Ireland. Archaeologists say the population growth dramatically increased once the skills of farming were mastered on the British Isles. And it does state British Islands. That's how my grandma wrote it, but that's what she means. I think she means the British Isles in general at first, but she's put British Islands, so I just want to make that clear. So at this point, we're taking a look at the everyday life of the Celts to get a better insight into what they were really like compared to all the numerous claims and, you know, whatever. And they were generally seen as foreigners, particularly the Greeks and Romans would call them that. This is something Titus did with the Germans, and here too we find people are a lot more admirable than the simple barbarians. The Romans in general cast them to be. Perhaps the same can be developed with the Celts as well. So what that means, I think what my grandma's getting at, is that many people called of us foreigners, basically, didn't they? And they always assumed them less wealthy, less knowledgeable, But when the truth actually comes out, yes, they may be less knowledgeable in one thing, but they sure as hell are brilliant in another. And that's the difference of the actual whole culture of people, isn't it? We're very, very different, and we can absolutely share things with other cultures, and they can share with us, and we can all learn. Not that that really happens, generally. But it would be nice if that did happen. And what she's basically stating is that the Celts were far more developed than what people would think. From the start of something, we have Celts that were nomadic mix of Germans, Scythians or Scythians, depends how you pronounce it, and Greek Ionians, even Persians for that matter. Now, there were a major cultural change in the people at circa 350 BC. If there were war, like before, they were even more so now. In appearance, they were very muscular-looking people, so it was assumed they lived a physical type lifestyle. Nothing wrong with that. Now, if you can read the Tan Bo Legends of Ireland, you can get your first confirmation of the Latini influence over the everyday mentality of people. I do think that book's somewhere. I'll have to find it. The system, no longer chiefdom orientated, meant everyone now had an opportunity to excel to greatness. This means when it is the off-seasons of war, it's kind of likely that everyday Celt practised in combat skills so that they could one day be recognised as a Celtic warrior, which the Celtic warriors, by the way, are seen as absolutely magnificent people. To become a Celtic warrior was, yeah. I need to stop with this imagination. Through the lens of the so-called quiet-looking Crannog, it suddenly looks like a miniature training camp. And we'll look up tools and weapons eventually, don't worry, of the Celts, and we'll look at them in detail, and swords in particular. I do have a few, if you're interested, because they were the finest made in the Iron Age. They were the finest made, absolutely, compared to any of the others, definitely. The King Arthur legends are yet another added confirmation of just how much the Celts treasured their swords. As Julius Caesar himself told in numerous letters, the Celts were not a uniform nation, and as such did not have a standing army. The Celts were indeed a massive annual military force. They fought in the good weather and returned home in the fall to harvest and tend to their domiciles. Though it is only a fictional story, there is to be found, I think it's Stephen Lawhead's author in his Pendragon series. That's one of the best examples of the reality of Celtic life. So look for, it's a story by Stephen Lawheads, and it's called Arthur in his Pendragon series. And that is one of the most closest and best representation of the Celts' actual lifestyle. And there's one chapter in the book when King Arthur is aware that the enemy army will be forced to leave battle because it's getting close to harvest. For him to get the advantage at this stage of his campaign, he has a portion of his army to go look at the loot, the enemy's harvest, that is, obviously, thus bringing what was generally viewed as an unorthodox victory. The enemy realised if they did not surrender, they would starve that winter. It's incredible, really. So with the intros out of the way, let's have a look at the Crannog and see how it kind of operated. So the appearance is like a small garrison. There's a master family dwelling, likely for storage food or wine, there's something, and then obviously they'll have the livestock, and then they have a third to house their slaves. So from stories of Finn MacCool, Niall of the Nine Hostages, and St. Patrick, you can learn readily the Celts did have slaves. In Ireland, in the late 5th century, slavery was a huge part of the economy. For obvious reasons, the Crannogs were located near a water source, be it river, stream, just any water supply really. Next, it was ideal to have the Crannog in a forest for two reasons. One for fuel source and the other for access to wild game. Greek writers have written more than enough on that subject, and the Celts had a particular passion for fresh game meals like boar, deer, and sometimes bear. Excavations done in Imamasha, Northern Ireland, found remains of bones from bears, So it's not hard to assume at some point in time the people of that community feasted on bears. I mean, you would, right? It's a big game that is going to feed a lot of people. And then you've got the coat that's going to keep them warm. Lastly, if the Crannog was on the main continent, there would be an open field of harvest. It sounds so nice. Considering cauldrons had been excavated, yes, cauldrons, I have a few, in their hundreds, and the mention of them in Celtic folklore is frequent, it stands to reason that porridge and stews were probably the mainstay of their everyday diet. Now, the porridge and stews, of course, they would cook from scratch themselves like I do, and trust me, oh, lush. The best source to find on the topic will be looking at the legends of Finn McCool, the Welsh legends around Taliesin. Do you know what that is? Oh, man. If you don't know what that is, go look. What a treat. What a treat. From these legends, you get the impression that the Celts had stews, and fish was the main source of protein in meat. As for drink, it's beyond a proven point. Etruscan wine was the most favoured beverage with the Hallstatt Celts later in the 3rd century. You'll start to see that the Celts had developed their own beverage known as mead. Yes, they brought mead, which is a very heavy beer-like drink. It's claimed Ibulum, ale of Scotland, is the closest surviving example of the ale that the Celts brewed. So if you're looking for something that's close to the Celtics, go to Scotland and have a Ibulum. I think it's Ebulum, something like that. Ebulum, and my grandma's actually underlined it and put it in brackets. I'm not sure why. She must have liked it. Archaeologists have proven from the excavations of the Hallstatt age, since 400 BC, basically, the overall Celtic economy was thriving. In the National Museum of Copenhagen, go and have a nosy online, you can see the extent of their wealth, as Celts even had time for fashion. Oh yeah, fashion indeed. It's amazing to see young girls sporting woolen miniskirts, altar tops. In the barbaric age, fashion like this does not even begin to reach our imagination. Yet, it happened, yes. They weren't quite as barbaric as what one thinks. And we imagine like furs and stuff, don't we? But no, you need to go and see. It's amazing. Found in every Celtic home were looms, combs, tin mirrors, jewellery, brooches, knives, wooden plates, urns, chairs, leather, and of course, the famous plaid woolen blankets. Gold was distributed among the common public as well, and it is said that Caesar had wagons full when he ended his 8-year campaign in Gaul. The average life expectancy of the Celtic people was said to be not more than 30 years, though it appeared the average Celt did have a fairly comfortable environment to live in. I mean, they weren't exactly destitute. Their everyday life seemed to dictate just a much shorter life, that's all. A warrior-based community tends to experience a lot of violence, and the Greek writers did point out that on numerous occasions when addressing the Celtic society, especially at feast gatherings, Celtic warriors were seen getting up boasting of their greatness, and when someone would challenge them, and a bloody fight would soon result in a fatal conclusion. In this type of everyday living, it's not conceivable the Celts could have survived long. Even without they had a problem of general disease and the invading Romans, sometimes they just... Sorry about that, guys. I had a delivery. But yeah, it's the way that they lived the life that could dictate a shorter life. The fact that they would challenge things and fights would break out, for example. And then you've got the general disease and the invading Romans. So there's a lot to think about. The Celts' secret to survival was procreation. In the letters of St. Paul to the Galatians, the Celts were very open on this subject. Men did not confine their affection for their mates to the bedroom. To the emerging Christian world, it probably appeared the most vulgar aspect of the Celts. Yet, when you look at the way they lived, the only thing they had going for them to prevent extinction was their sexual nature. And I have spoken about sexual nature in general anyway, so it's not like it's not something that I've not spoke about, and I think it's important to be at one with your sexual self. I'm definitely not ashamed of my sexual self, that's for sure. So when we come back, we're going to look at chariot and wagons. I'm going to attempt to draw some sort of design and show you. I'm going to attempt. I'm sorry about the dogs, guys, but it was a delivery, and an important delivery, actually. So yeah, thanks for listening. I truly appreciate it. Hit that like, subscribe, and share. Many blessings.